Hey there, it's Robin, and you're listening to Healthy Habits for a Healthier Home. I'm here to help you create a healthier life, one simple shift at a time. If you're a mama ready to ditch toxins, clean up your family's nutrition, and build daily habits that support your well-being, you're definitely in the right place. Each episode is packed not only with education, but practical tips and tools to help you transform your health and your home without that feeling of overwhelm. So let's take this journey together to create a thriving, low-tox home for you and your family. If you're ready, say, I am ready. Now let's get into this episode. Hey y'all, welcome back to today's episode. I am really excited to share this conversation with someone who's in our community who has been walking the journey of creating a healthier life over the last several years. As I always say, keeping it real, that it is truly those 1% shifts that actually help to create that transformation. And I really feel like hearing real stories can really help someone if they are in a dip, if maybe they're just starting their journey, if they are kind of stalled, if they need some encouragement. I just feel like we can always learn from each other. And so that's why I feel like this conversation is so important to share. She's going to talk a little bit about why she got started, where she got started, some of the challenges that she faced, that she still might be facing, some of the dips, some of the wins she's experienced, and especially some of the lessons that she's learned throughout the journey. My hope is that when you listen today, that you start to realize that health is not about perfection. It is about coming home to yourself. It's about caring for yourself. It's about really dialing it back, self-care, what actually works for you individually, getting to know yourself a little bit better. So I am really excited. So let's jump into the conversation with Mel and see what we can all take away. Like I said in the intro, I am really excited to be having this conversation with someone who means a lot to me. Her name is Mel, and she's been in my community for a long time, but she's been in my life for even longer. So welcome, Mel.
Yeah, thank you. It's an honor to be here with you and to be able to share with you. And I know that we've talked about this, but just to share with your community and, if I can touch one person and, things that I talk about today resonate with them, that's what it's all about. That's where I'm at in my life. You can't really see, but the tank top that I'm wearing right now says, I'm just here for the karma. So I'm here putting all the good karma out there.
I love it. So, for people who don't know you, I would love to kind of start, which again, is several years ago when you first came to me. What was it that at that moment in your time, if you can remember back that far, but what was it in that moment that, number one, you said, I need something more like a coach, but also just what made you really decide? Because I feel like that's what happens is like people come to one thing and it just makes them sort of like, okay, now I got to go. So, what was that for you, if you can remember?
Sure. Well, it's hard to remember exactly. However, I can share that pretty much my entire life. I mean, ever since I was an adolescent, I would say like early teens, even going into being like 16, 17, obviously adulthood, I have struggled with my weight. I was heavier as a kid. I grew up in the 90s, so it was very much like the diet culture and the heroin chic was in, and that was not what I look like. And so, from as far back as I can remember as a kid, I've always sort of just struggled with my weight and wanted to look a different way and went through different what I'll call versions of myself, been in different like forms of my skin, so to speak. I've gained weight, I've lost weight, I've had two children. So obviously going through pregnancy, and as any woman who's gone through pregnancy, your body goes through changes and you're supposed to be gaining weight. But when you've lived a lot of your life not wanting to and seeing that scale move significantly, it was a challenge as well. And so when I came to you, I I was, at one of those points where I'm always looking to better myself. And if I'm being honest now as I reflect, I was always looking for the silver bullet. And so I was like, oh, Robin starting this journey. You and I go way back. I mean, since I was a little kid, I remember you being in my life. So you're obviously someone that I trust. And I when you were sharing with me what you were embarking on and asked if you could, if I wanted to engage with you and have that help, I was like, yes, because I'm always looking to learn and um, you know, see what I can do to lose weight. That's where I was when I was with you. I was in the mindset of I want to lose weight. What can I
Yes,
do?
and I specifically remember that piece because that is so often what women come, that's their first kind of step into working with a coach, reflecting on their health, wanting something different. It usually starts in the form of weight, which I would love at some point to be able to, transition that lens for so many more people because it's really not the weight, right? It's as you know now, right? As you've kind of gone through, it's really so much deeper and so much more. But weight is something that in our society, it's up, it's down, it's, fad, it's this diet, that diet, up, it's like restriction, eat whatever you want, it's fat free. There's so much confusion around it. Of course, we don't know what we're doing, right? And so, and we were taught really by having all of that noise, the empowerment was taken away from us
Right.
in a way where we felt like we had to rely on other people and other tactics and silver bullets and all those things in order to get good health.
Mhm.
But I know now you're very different. So aside from weight, because I do remember you saw your first functional doctor during that very first time that we worked together. What, again, aside from weight, was there any health struggles that you were having at that time that you could, because at that point you really weren't peri, or maybe you were a little bit
Well,
peri,
I
but
didn't realize I didn't. It's so interesting, Robin, because from a health perspective and in chatting with you and you sharing a little bit of your journey with me, I did go down the path of functional medicine. But again, the core of why I was going there is there's something wrong with me because I can't lose weight. I'm holding on to weight. And we can get as this conversation evolves, I'll obviously share what I've learned and how my mindset has shifted. But there were a couple of things that were sort of starting to be the canary in the coal mine that I didn't even know existed because I know for a fact when we first started working together, I had never even heard of the term perimenopause. And so that wasn't even on my radar. But as I reflect back, I definitely, some of the signs that I was having, just being tired, feeling not sleeping well, like waking up in the middle of the night every single night. Like I had my, it was between like 1:30 and 2 o'clock every morning, the witching hour. And then bing, like your brain's alive and you're thinking about the 9,000 things that you could be doing and then falling asleep and just having that interrupted sleep. I was waking up, I don't think I had shared this with you, but I was waking up with night sweats where it was like gross, like I would
right.
wake up and the sheets would be soaking wet.
Yeah.
And so
I always thought I was getting the flu. I'd be like,
yeah,
oh my God, I'm getting sick. Like, what the heck? And then I'm like, okay, relax. This happened 6 months ago. Like, you didn't get sick. Something else was up, So I'd go and change. And the next day I'd be like, okay, I'm not sick. I'm totally fine. Like, that was weird. And
yeah,
but it wouldn't happen often enough to like link it. It was just like, what the heck is happening? Like,
yeah,
around every 6 months that I'm like profusely sweating. Like, it was
right,
weird. But nobody talked about.
right,
I didn't even think I knew to say to my gynecologist, like, this is happening. It was like when I went, it was like, how are you feeling? I'm like, I don't know, I guess fine. And everything would
yeah,
come back fine. So it was like, so
yeah,
yeah. So that is definitely an area we're going to get into, definitely in this conversation.
right,
When we first started talking though, and trying to formulate a plan that worked for you, which is different than what most people do, which most people prescribe here, try this diet, try this workout plan, try this. And I always came at it differently because you have to pick and choose like what feels the most aligned to you, because that's really the only way it's going to stick. And also, I don't know what you're feeling exactly, and I don't know what your daily life is like. And if I tell someone to do X, Y, and Z and it's impossible to fit into their day, it's never going to work.
Right.
So that was one of the things I loved about my schooling, was just really the drive home for bioindividuality, and just really being on the journey with someone and not being the journey for them.
Yeah.
So when we first started working, I know that was it is for everybody. It's like, what? Wait, you're not going to tell me exactly what to
Yeah. How
do?
many
So,
calories? How
right,
many grams of fat?
exactly. And all that does matter in time, but that's not typically where we'll start because it doesn't make the most sense. What felt overwhelming for you with that new kind of scenario, or confusing, if anything, when we first, started to conversate, every few weeks?
I think in some ways it was having more freedom, and there was definitely less rigidity around what you and I would talk about, going back to, it wasn't like, oh, it's Whole30, or oh, it's Weight Watchers. And one of the things that I do remember with you that I think in the very beginning did feel overwhelming was about just talking about like whole foods in general and processed foods, and starting to read labels and starting to make decisions on like what's in the food, and just becoming having an awareness. And not only that, but then translating not only the food aspect, but then even household items, and because you take a very holistic approach. And I think in the beginning for me, it just felt like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. Like I at the time my kids were younger, they're teenagers now, but they were in elementary school, maybe starting middle school, regardless, like very young. And I worked, and I had them every other week. I share custody with them. So I'm like, I don't have time for this. Like, this just
Mhm.
seems so overwhelming to me. So I think that aspect of it, because I never really, up until that point, Robin, I don't think that I really, really looked at ingredients until then.
Yeah, which is most people,
Mhm.
because I mean, honestly, when you think about going to the grocery store in our minds, we're busy, chaotic life, all of those things, but also just on the side of like, you're walking in a grocery store, it's on the shelf. Yeah, we know that junk food's donuts and junk food's this, we know it's junk food per se, but if it's on the shelf, you think it's gone through a process, right? Where somebody's
It's
vetted
been
it. Right.
right,
It's been vetted. It's got to be, not poisonous. I mean, it's not going to be good
right,
for you, but it's not poisonous per
right,
se. And that's not the case. And
right.
so that is where I typically start with people, is just pick something. And I do remember one of your habits that you had was eating a crunchy snack at night, which
Yes.
has a whole list of things that go along with it. But I remember I told you we're not going to take away the snack. We're just going
Yeah.
to get a different crunchy food that's a whole food. And again, it's not about deprivation, it's about swapping, and it's about finding out what it is that's comforting in that.
Hmm.
And so, just curious, do you do as much snacking at night as you used to?
No,
Right,
no.
because things have changed.
Yeah.
So we're going to
Yeah.
get into that because I think that's also interesting, because your journey, again, you have taken the holistic approach, and you have really shed a lot of layers and things. You've done the work. And that's really why I wanted to have you on, because it's not like we talked for 6 months and then you were magic, right? I mean, it's
Right.
it's been a process. So in the beginning with that overwhelm, I remember you saying, I'm going to do the best I can. And so it's just like, start with one product. And that's what I tell everybody. Start with just one personal care, one food that your kids eat a lot of, right? And it's always about what's the most thing that you consume. Let's
Right.
swap that first,
Yeah.
because, if your kids are eating chips, chips are not the enemy. It's just the type of chip, right? And what's in the chip.
Hmm.
that makes it, detrimental or really not. So for you, what were the first few shifts that you might have made where you thought, okay, like this isn't as overwhelming and it's like
Hmm.
one small step.
Hmm.
Do you remember anything specifically that felt like this might be okay?
Yeah, I can do this. Um, I don't remember like specific products, but I do remember just having a level of awareness of like, okay, this is what this, not necessarily what like every single ingredient means, but just the concept of, can I pronounce what's in the ingredient list?
Hmm.
And like, if I can't pronounce half these words, do I really want to be giving them to my children? And so I think that it's just started slowly from there. Now, was it like toss the snack bin and we're starting from scratch? No. Um, but I think for me, it just became a level of awareness. And then honestly, for a while, it was a struggle because it's like once you know, and you can't go back. But I wasn't ready to really start making those shifts. I know there's like a readiness to change. So I'm in the employee benefit space. I've been here for 25 years. And so I have worked with employers. I am an employer group myself and have worked at other employer groups. And when we talk about like wellness programs, we talk about where people are on this readiness to change. Are they just curious about information? Are they getting, and this,
Hmm.
and where are they? Are they ready to like, yes, I am making the swap. I think for a while I was not ready to like, yes, let's do this. It was just an awareness and maybe it influenced more of what I was buying. My kids didn't eat like too horrible, I wouldn't say. I mean, we definitely had like, the big box of chips that you would get, and they were eating peanut butter and jelly. I still cooked every night. It's not like we were going through the drive-through and, they were eating a ton of like processed
One
food.
of the things as your kids got older that I really loved that you did though was you included them. And I think that's
Yes.
super important when you have kids of whatever age, but when you start, there's a couple of levels. When you start to make the choice to swap, if you're just doing it alone,
Yeah.
it's super easy to go back to your old habits, right? But when you involve the kids and then you're teaching the kids, and honestly, it's just a handful of things because if you can just memorize that handful,
Right.
it's seed oils, it's, natural flavors, it's food dyes. I mean, if you just do those three things, to be honest, and then the grams of sugar, it literally wipes out half the store. So, or
Yeah.
half of the things in your cart. So I
Yeah.
feel like, again, pronouncing is very important if you don't know
Mhm.
how to, but you don't have to know what everything means. I mean,
Right.
if you're curious, you can look those things up, but it's like just being aware of what we're looking for.
Right.
And again, it's not the enemy, but it's just, okay, if I really like this, is there another version that makes sense to me? So
Right.
when we were going through that, there was a little hesitancy, I would
Mhm.
say,
Mhm.
but we shifted to other parts because holistically, it's not just the food on your plate, right? It's
Right.
what we call primary foods, everything off your plate that feeds your soul, which
Mhm.
is career, relationship, education, finances, spirituality, friendships, relationships, how you move your body. All of those things matter, and it is part of your health and wellness. And I feel like when we got to some of that, that's where that pivoted for you. And
Mhm.
you really went more down that sector of wellness.
Yeah.
So,
It became more about what am I doing for myself? So really cultivating like a morning routine. And I think when you and I first started working together, was it before COVID or after COVID?
I think it was during.
It might have, yeah. So I went from going into an office 5 days a week to now
Mhm.
working from home. Obviously, the kids were at home with me too. And what that time allowed me to start cultivating that I've really doubled down on is my morning routine. So instead of getting up and I'm a coffee drinker, it is one thing I cannot give up. Now, the amount of coffee and what I put in my coffee has changed over the years.
Because again, I just want to be clear, coffee's not the enemy,
No,
right? And no, there's no food that's actually the quote unquote enemy of all of
right,
this. It's just how you prepare it, what's in it.
right,
And Coffee is just coffee and water.
Yeah.
It's just all the other stuff we add that makes it a dessert and 20 million, grams of sugar. I mean,
Yes.
so I want people to understand it's not like coffee is not a healthy thing,
Right.
but also we have learned
Yes.
coffee beans versus ground coffee, mold versus not, low.
Well, and I used to be the all of the flavored creamers, and then
Mhm.
you get I'm just going to say it this way. I mean, you kind of get tricked in how the marketing is with a lot
Mm.
of these, like, oh, this is natural something or other. I forget because I used to drink the Coffee Mate ones. They would call them natural something or other, and you think
Oh, I know what you're talking
this
about.
is the healthier version, and then like you flip the label over, and you're like, whoa, I might as well be
Liar.
mainlining sugar, you know. But but going back to the routine, so I would go outside on my back patio and I had a lot of like potted plants and stuff. And I would drink my coffee and listen to the birds and watch because I was in employee benefits at that time and it was a very intense time. So it was really just taking that time for myself in the morning to go outside, drink my coffee, see the sunlight. And what I've learned now is there were so many biological things that I was doing for myself, like not really knowing, like getting sunlight in your eyes helps with your circadian rhythm. It helps with your cortisol level, all of these things that were really good, I would say, like unintended consequences of me really doubling down on that morning routine and and you teaching me some grounding techniques as well where I would close my eyes, like what is it that I see, what is it that I smell, what is it that I taste, and just because my mind would go, and again, given what was going on in the world and even not realizing the throes of perimenopause that I was in, my mind was my worst enemy. So I would say
Mm.
that helping me really cultivate and ground into that morning routine and starting to incorporate movement because then I started walking a lot then too.
Yeah. I think routine and morning routines, especially in perimenopause or when your cortisol is out of whack, or if you're having health issues, or really for everything. I just think it's super important because it not only allows you to build good habits, but like you said, you get all these additional benefits that you don't even have to plan for, right? It's not like you're like, okay, I'm going to look at the sun for my cortisol, but it's like, no, you're just going outside and you're going to enjoy and you're going to get all
And it
these,
feels good.
yeah, and you're going to get all these added benefits, and grounding for people who don't know, it's just a way to become aware of being present in the moment. And so your brain absolutely cannot do two things at once. So if you are using your five senses, this is one of many different grounding things. But when you're talking to yourself and you're looking and you're seeing and you're tasting and you're feeling, all of that other noise that might be swirling in your head has to kind of dissipate because you can only think about what you're asking yourself. And so I think I'm always a proponent of questioning when you have a thought, asking yourself, is this really true? Is this serving me?
Right.
Am I somewhere different in my life where it no longer is? And so I need to, throw it out. And during this wellness transition, there's a lot of talking to yourself and
Yeah.
during which I feel like a lot of this always seems to be going on during perimenopause and menopause, or like when you're entering, or that like phase of motherhood where you have some of the similar kind of symptoms, I guess.
Mhm.
But it's where we just really, like you said, we do need to double down on ourselves. And I think that's something that for many, many years in motherhood,
Yes.
we just let it go because you
Right.
just literally can't do everything. And so we're obviously going to go to our kids first, our work,
Mhm.
our partner,
Mhm.
whatever it is. But that has to also change because we're
Right.
not showing up in our best version for our kids by doing that. But
Yeah.
it's just nobody's taught us that. And our parents were of the first, I think, real working generation.
Yes. My mom worked, I remember, and my mom was the first in her family amongst her sisters to even get a 2-year degree. So, and
Hmm.
just took her career was very important to her. And that is something that she really instilled in me. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think that having something for yourself is very important. whether it's a career, whether it's a hobby, whether it's a passion, whether it's serving, whatever it is for you, wherever you are in your life, I think it is important, but does not define you.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that's a big one that
So you see my face because I think that's at the point in my life where I was starting to figure that out. And so I think it's wonderful, Robin, because I feel like it's a really great transition into kind of where my life went from there, which was questioning, which I feel like I do all the time, but like questioning, what is my purpose? What
Mhm.
is like, I worked so hard. I was very like, in school, I was a great student. Even in college, I was making like the dean's list and the president's list. And it was like, work, work, work. I got this degree. And then it was like, okay, climb, climb, climb. And I want this title and I want that. And I never stopped to ask myself, is this really what I want? Or am I really happy? Because I thought, and I still have remnants of this, but I thought I would feel happy when? I would feel happy when I lost 15 pounds. I will feel happy when I get this promotion at work. I will feel happy when this number is in my bank account. I will feel happy when someone's laying next to me in the bed every night. Like I thought happiness was in having all of these things. And the biggest thing that I have learned is that it really comes from within. But that is the time where when I was sitting in the morning, where I really started questioning things and really saying, who is Melanie when she's not a benefit manager, as an example? Like
Mhm.
who is Melanie aside from a mom? A mom is the most important title to me. Um, but it was that start of like questioning things, which then really made me go deeper into this journey because and the decline of hormones that was happening. So I did start seeing a functional doctor at that point. She had recommended things that I started doing. So like one of them was removing my IUD because I didn't know when I was getting a period or when I was not getting a period because I was like, woo, I got this IUD in and I don't have to worry about this anymore. But what I was really missing out on, and if there's any women that are younger out there that have an IUD, I would highly recommend you think about that because what my body, and this is something that you taught me too, Robin, was to start really listening to myself. So again, not looking to the external to tell me about like what foods I should be eating and stuff. Like, what is your body telling you that you want? What is calling? What are you craving? And not like craving ice cream. It's like
Mhm.
I'm craving green bell peppers. Okay, well, maybe there's something in the green bell peppers right now that my body needs. So let's make
Mhm.
something with some green bell peppers. But I kind of knew. So my kids are 14 months apart. And when my daughter was 6 months old, I had this sneaking suspicion that I was pregnant. And lo and behold, I was. And I will never forget going into the doctor's office for the confirmation. My son's about to be 16. And let me just say for the record, Sam, if you're listening to this, honey, the biggest and best surprise of my entire life. And I'm so glad you came to me when you did. And I love and adore you. However, when I went for that initial, the initial pregnancy visit, I remember sitting across from my doctor and I was like, this cannot happen again. So I walked out with the congratulations, you're pregnant packet and you're getting the Mirena IUD packet. Here's all the stuff you need to know. And I scheduled basically after he was born, boom, 6 weeks later, I was getting the IUD and had another one put in. And what that separated me from Robin is not knowing what was going on with my cycles.
Yeah. And again, there are all kinds of tools and things people will recommend to prevent pregnancies, obviously. But again, it is not just listening to those people, but doing your own research,
Yes.
understanding what you're truly doing when you put something in your body, whether it's a birth control pill, whether it's an IUD, whether it's whatever all the other patches and the
Right.
this and the that, whatever. Understand biologically what
Mhm.
it's actually doing because physiologically it changes you.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's fine and great. And for others, it's not. And I just encourage people to sit and get quiet and do that questioning and really do the research and not just trust whoever's telling you whatever. And it's not that they're intentionally doing things to harm you, but
Right.
they're only telling you what they've been trained with.
Correct.
And it's up to us to decide if what they've been trained with works for us or not.
Right.
So there is a reason why we get a period, right? There's a
Yeah.
biological reason why we get a period and why we get a cycle. And something that I know you have Zoe and I have two girls, and something that I was never taught that I just learned when I was in perimenopause going into post is how our whole month is we actually have 4 cycles because every week we're having a different part of the cycle. And I'm like, man, I got duped. Why didn't I know this 15 years ago when I was like a lunatic on this week, cramping and like going to kill someone this week, and it's like we are again, it was such a disservice. So I'm trying to educate my children now. They're a little bit
Yes.
older, but
Yeah.
just trying to empower them to like understand yourself. And I wish I would have known it when they were even smaller so that, when I had a better hold on them, but they're, 22 and 19. So they got to really want to invest in themselves. But if I tell you, you have better periods when you actually understand your cycle. And why isn't that taught in health class,
Oh my
right? Like
gosh.
we only
Yeah.
teach that you get a period and you wear a pad and boys, whatever, and then here's some deodorant, and it's like,
Right. Yes.
and it's like
Fifth grade. Fifth grade, you get
fifth
the
grade.
movie.
That's right. You
It's
get, you
30
swap the
minutes.
movie. That's right.
Yeah.
And you think you know
That's it.
everything. You're like, woo.
Yeah.
Um, I want to go back to the morning routine though, because something that you said really resonated with me, which is all the things that were happening while you were sitting outside. And for people to just kind of take a grasp of, or to get a grasp of what was actually happening, is that when we do give ourselves the opportunity to get still, right? Whether it's in nature, which is always a benefit, whether it's on a yoga mat, whether it's going to church, whether it's doing whatever, being out in the community, when we give ourselves the opportunity to get quiet, that is where healing also begins. Because when we are just rushing through life and continually keeping busy, we're missing all of the parts and pieces that we really need to be healing and working through. And those healing parts are not there to define us. They're there to give us clues about ourselves so that we can better understand ourselves so we can make different choices. I know you know this, but the buzzwords are childhood trauma and
Yeah.
trauma this, trauma that, and trauma is real, and I'm not discounting that. And there's mega trauma, big T and little t, and there's all the things. But what again our society does is we label it because we're really good with labeling things, but then we get stuck in the label, and then they
Yes.
think they're the label. It's like being ADD or ADHD or any of the labels, right? That doesn't define who you are. The trauma and whatever childhood stuff we had in childhood doesn't define who we are today. It gives us certain characteristics if we've not sat with it, dealt with it, seen it, felt it, and then made a decision. Is this who I actually am? Or was it
Right.
just a survival technique to get me through that time? And gosh, my body's amazing, right? That it was
Yeah.
able to do that for me. But I'm no longer that age. I'm no longer that child. I'm no
Right.
longer in that same parent child role. So now you get to make better choices. But I get worried with the way our society is that a lot of people are getting stuck in the label of whatever it is that you experienced. So hopefully, I don't know if you're listening or if you seek out counseling or if you are with somebody who's professional, that you think about recognizing it, seeing it, and then asking for help to like process to move on. I think we
Right.
forget to do that part.
Yeah.
But that's where quiet time, I think,
Ye-
comes in.
A
Um,
100%. And it's really funny, Robin, not funny, haha, but really interesting is I know I have a sweater on right now, but we'll get to this part in my life, but I had this moment a couple of years ago where really like the snow globe of life, if you will, got shook up. And I actually got a tattoo as a result of this point in my life. And it says, be still and know. which is a clip, I will say, of a verse that's in the Bible. I am not I'm a very spiritual person. I'm not a religious person, and that's a whole other podcast for a whole other day. However, I believe that we are connected to God. We all are divine beings. So for me, be still and know means when you quiet your mind, you allow that divine energy, the voice of God
Mhm.
that will guide you and that will give you, that's what intuition is. It's
Yes.
that pull. It's that, I talked about wanting to eat the green bell pepper, but so many things like, I don't think that this job is right for me anymore. Like, okay, let's be still. Let's see what comes up. And to your point, we're so busy as a society that if we don't give ourselves that stillness, we are really cutting ourselves off from that divine, um,
Connection and just
yeah,
relationship and all of the things, the important things.
yeah. And then my
Yeah.
sister-in-law sent me, which was really cool, and I highly recommend this. I don't do it as often, so I will disclaim that, but she bought me, it's called a 5-minute gratitude journal, and it's
Mhm.
really cool because literally it's like it's 5 minutes, and the way that it's laid out, it just allows you to drop into that energy frequency too, and connect you more to that feeling and that because what you're grateful for is a lot of divine stuff too. Your
Mhm.
family members, your animals, your plants, your, whatever it is. And so I would do that too. I would sit outside and I would do
And
the
something about that, the whole that practice in general is that that's a great journal to have, but you can do that anywhere. You could do that at a stoplight.
yeah.
And the other beautiful thing about living in gratitude is that if you're living in gratitude, you can't live in anger. If you're
Mhm,
living in gratitude, you can't live in these other big emotions that
mhm.
really aren't serving you. And
In
so,
that moment, it's kind of
yes,
like when you're grounding, it's
that's
like
right.
you can't, they're two opposing emotions. You can't necessarily hold
Correct.
them at the same time. Everything is kind of moving through you.
That's right.
But it's when you stop and you
Hmm.
get still and then you shift that gear of like, I've been angry because I've had a lot of big T trauma. Again, whole
Yeah.
other topic for a whole other podcast. But like when I could sit and focus on that, and there have been times in my life where I have ruminated on that. But when I really just sit and look at the birds and look at the blue sky and look at my plants, it just does something uplifting. Or if I go to the beach, or if I go hiking, or if I'm by a body of water, or whatever the case is, you're right. It does kind of snap
But
you
we
out.
have to, so it's very interesting you're talking about this because every place that you're talking about finding gratitude is all outside in nature, right? And we have to physically go there. But what if you were able to practice that same thing at work, in your
Yeah.
car while you're driving, having road rage, at a dinner place where, the waiter was rude? So, what I have started doing, and I find it to be an interesting experiment, is when I have that gut reaction of just that person ticked me off. And so, like, my anger goes up and, impulsivity, I guess. It's like that impulse to, after I'm in it, right? I'm like, okay, I could sit and it's staying in me, right? Like
Yeah.
but I need to work through that. So I have been shifting to like kind of looking around and being, like, I'm really grateful that they put that stop sign in over there because it keeps us all safe. Or, recognize this person's over here in this car. I hope they're having a good day. Like, I try to bring myself out of it faster because it's very easy to live there.
Yeah.
But what something that I'm really, really learning in yoga, which I don't even know if this is actually yoga, it's just something I'm getting from it, is taking my practice from my mat into the world. Being able to connect my breath with my body movement and that stillness and just being able to breathe, because a lot of
Mhm.
times when you get angry or whatever, you're holding your breath, and or just whatever, if you're having a chaotic moment or your child does something or your husband or whatever, it's like, how do you get out of that and get back to what it feels like when I'm on the mat? So I've been really trying to cultivate more of my mat practices throughout the day. And it's been interesting. I will say I always talk about whatever it is you're working on, experimenting, because
Yeah.
we are an experiment of ourselves. And
Mhm.
this whole time, as you've been talking, and I know we're going to be talking about perimenopause here in just a second, menopause, it truly is when you start onto this journey, when you're finally there and really ready, it is really about a homecoming. It is coming back to yourself. And not to say everybody on the outside, nobody has good opinions or nobody has really wise, information or anything like that, but it's sifting through it and making sense of it for yourself. And
Mhm.
as we do that, we really instill in ourselves, A, our body is amazing. B, it's a gift that God did give us. And what is the purpose that I'm here? Right? Like why did he make me this being with these characteristics? And why did he also challenge me with these things? It's just, I feel like this stage post menopause, which I know you're there now, it's just this, I don't know, like a great awakening, or I don't I don't know really what to call it. I've been mulling over like words for it,
Right.
but it's just lived experience, wisdom. But for me, it's just realizing and recognizing the journey has just begun again.
Yes, it's a whole new chapter.
Yeah.
And as you were talking, what I think of too for myself is acceptance. That
Mm,
was my word of 2025 was acceptance.
mm,
And in acceptance become will come peace.
mm,
And I think in the chaos that you go through during perimenopause, physiologically, because of the hormonal chaos that's happening and the withdrawal, and I'm being very prescriptive with that word, the withdrawal that every single body system is going through because it is not getting the levels of hormones that it got for pretty much your entire adult life.
mm.
That's chaos. And so when you come to acceptance, and there's things that we can do to mitigate that,
Sure.
but when you come to that acceptance, there's peace.
Mm.
And I think for me, midlife is about peace. And what am I doing? What am I doing to cultivate peace in my life? And also understanding that I will not be at peace 24 hours a day. But exactly what you're talking about is noticing, oh, I'm feeling a little ramped up right now. Okay, what can I do to accept whatever it is that's happening so that I can come back to peace? And for me, that's a lot of what I had to shift my mindset
Ooh, I love that.
of out of again, like I wanted to lose weight. And so when I entered this, what I call like the final stage of perimenopause into menopause, which again, for those of you who may not be aware, is one day in your life.
That's
One
right.
day. We say menopause like, oh, da, da. No, it's one day. It's like a birthday. It's 1 year, 365 days of no period. And as I was really getting to that culmination of that one day in my life, I had to I had to start doing things differently. And I really thought I was having a midlife crisis. I would say probably 2023-ish. And what had happened in the 5 years leading up to that, my dad died unexpectedly. We went through a pandemic and I was in HR and in benefits and I lost employees. Like I talked to, I'm making up names here, but I talked to Bob on Monday and the following week Bob was on a ventilator. The following week Bob was dead. And I was like, "Whoa, this is crazy." And people were losing family members. It was stressful. Then my mom, who struggled with alcoholism, COVID was not kind to that disease for her. And so there was a lot of struggles that were happening during the pandemic with her. And she unexpectedly passed away in 2021. And I found myself kind of fast forward to 2023 just like going through all of that, really not processing it in a way, and having this hormonal chaos that was happening. I remember waking up in the middle of the night with heart palpitations, thinking that I need to go see a cardiologist. And the heart palpitations were then followed by extreme anxiety. And this is why I thought I was having a midlife crisis, because I'm like, something is wrong with me. And I got to a point in my life in the beginning part of 2024 where I kind of use like the Roadrunner cartoon where they have the TNT and they're like they do the little like press down on the thing and everything blows up within 1 month. May 1st to the end of May, I quit my job and I ended a 3.5 year relationship that I was in because I just was in this pressure cooker and I didn't know what to do to get out of it. And so once sort of the dust settled from that,
I
I
want to
did,
stop for 1 second
yeah,
because, well, no, because you bring up a lot of good points. And I think anybody listening that thinks they're in perimenopause or has some of these symptoms, A, you are okay.
yes,
There's nothing actually, I mean, there is something wrong, but there's nothing wrong with
it's
you.
normal what you're
Right.
going
It
through.
is a physiological change that brings on, because it does interfere with every single part of your body. It brings on sometimes for some people a lot of anxiety or the palpitations, or it's not just night sweats. There's like frozen shoulder and there's this foot junk, and there's so many things that are just not talked about. So if you are struggling with something like that and you're also in that, 40 range, even 35 range, it's like
Yeah.
do yourself a favor and just it cannot hurt. Get your levels checked of all your hormones, not just your three, but we have a lot of like vitamin D is a hormone, guys. It's not just a vitamin. So you got to really go to somebody who understands and get like a full panel so that you can again be your own personal advocate. And we were just not taught that. I mean,
No.
I don't know how my mom survived. I remember the hot flashes for her. She had palpitations, she had frozen shoulder, but they chalked it up to all this other garbage. And at the time I was like, so little, I had no idea. But looking back, I'm like, oh my God, she must have been in perimenopause and they just didn't even know it. And we just need to know that we can find out the information at least and then start down that path. Because I think, again, when we know and we're aware, we're more empowered to feel better that you don't feel like you're really losing your marbles when you are losing your marbles. And it does feel like that. And I will say, I was talking to a friend the other day and I'm like, I feel like I kind of sailed through perimenopause. It's just been menopause for me that has like totally taken me out. But then when we were chatting and it's like looking back, I'm like, oh, maybe there was a couple of things, right? But they weren't so crazy that
Right.
I obviously didn't put it together. So everybody's journey is going to look different. And it doesn't
Yeah.
matter how healthy you are, because I've also learned genetics play a huge role in all of this. And that's something that a regular doctor is not going to understand.
Because they don't get the training on it in their defense.
100%. Yeah,
Right.
100%. They don't get the train. They don't have the connection, the correlation,
Mhm.
methylation. There's just so many other parts and components. And most people can take hormones and have great reactions. And I just happen not to be that person. So it has led me down a different rabbit hole, but I'm not giving up. But what I have decided, and this is something I heard you say before, I've had to like have a talk with myself that I am where I am and I'm doing everything that I possibly can. And there are just some days where my brain is just not full functioning. It's going to go offline, as what I call it. And if I sit down and do something and my brain's just not quite, able to, I just, instead of pushing through, right? Instead of just be like, tough, you have to do it. I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to do it today, or I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to go and I'm going to do something different. And maybe that's a luxury, right? But I'm also aware that if I go to do that task, it's not going to be done well either. So it is, there's just so many parts and pieces. So if you are in perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, there are steps and things to take, but just know it's an individualized journey.
Yes.
And hormones are on the rise. We're all talking about it. I'm so excited that at least women are being talked about, going to be studied hopefully a little bit better, but it's not a cookie cutter situation either.
Right.
And that's where I want people to really be empowered to know that when they go and they give you the same recipe that they give the other 5 people that were in the office, that might not be the correct dosages for you.
Right.
But they're also doing the best with what they have, so they have to start somewhere. And so that the whole hormone thing is a process. So it's not like you're just going to jump on something and it's going to be the magic pill. Also, if you do not have good foundational lifestyle stuff in place, hormones are not going to do it.
Right.
They're not going to be the magic bullet. So that's something I really hope and wish that more providers are also talking about
Mhm.
when they're prescribing these things and
Yeah.
whatever format that they're describing them in. People need to understand that your foundation has to be building in order for all that to work.
And I'm case in point because at the time that I hit the TNT on HRT,
Mm.
I was not on the same dosage or the same, I would say, form that I'm on now, but
Mm-hmm.
I my lifestyle, to exactly to your point, was not in a place that could support me and support where I was along that journey. And so after all of that happened, I took the summer, I spent a lot of time with my kids, and I spent a lot of time outside and being quiet. And then towards the end, and I talked to you a lot, and towards the end of that summer, you had, brought up again a functional practitioner that you had started working with and were seeing some results. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. And this time it was not the same like before. Like even when I went to the other functional practitioner, it was like I did the things like I thought getting my IUD out was going to help me lose weight. I mean, everything that I did, I'm telling you, was like, oh, and when I do this, I'm going to lose the weight or it's going to make it so much easier for me. And so at the point that I started seeing this new functional provider, I was at I was at a point where I'm like, I don't want to feel insane anymore.
Right. It wasn't about losing weight because at this point,
It was my mental
it
health.
was your mental health
It
because
was my mental health. And another
postmenopause was coming.
interesting thing to note is so my dad passed in 2018. In 2019, I was having anxiety attacks. I was 41 years old at the time. And I was seeing a counselor because I was processing my dad's death. And she said, and she was a counselor that I've seen on and off since I was 16. So she knew a lot about my life. And she said, Melanie, I think you should really consider an SSRI. And I was like, okay, I know this, but I need you to explain to me how it works. And so she talked about the lock and key, how it blocks the receptors. It allows serotonin to hang out in the synaptic gap, which then creates an elevated mood. Okay. I march over to my PCP. I tell her everything that's going on. She puts me on what I call the baby dose of Lexapro. And it took the edge off. And I was like, I felt like the Lexapro Pied Piper because whoever I could talk to about it, I was talking about how life changing it was. But again, nothing else was really changing at that time. And then
Mhm.
as I had all of these other life events happening to me, like, guess what happened? The Lexapro went up and up and up. And at the point where the TNT was hit in my life, I was on the highest dose. And so I got to like the end of that summer and still my mental health was not in a good state. So when I entered into this new relationship with a new functional provider, it was looking at all of those pieces and parts. Not only did she look at all of the hormones, she looked at my neurotransmitters, she looked at my liver functions, like everything inside my body. I cannot like it would blew my mind like how much blood got taken, how much saliva, how much urine, like it was very comprehensive. And then she sat down and she started putting all of the pieces and parts together. And the first one of the first things that she said, and you were next to me when she was going over all my results, she's like, I want to talk to you about your neurotransmitters. And Robin, up to that point, no one had checked my neurotransmitters. So, ladies, if you're in this phase, and I am not here to villainize SSRIs, or antidepressants. I think that they are a tool to have in your toolbox. And if they are right for you, you should use them. I am not here to say don't do them, but I say go into it knowing, eyes wide
Educated.
open, what, like, do you really need it? And so she's like, she shows me this panel and I see this red bar. And she said, this is your serotonin. So remember, Lexapro is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. What does it do? It makes more serotonin hang out in your synaptic gap. Well, guess what? I had way, way, way highway to the danger zone, red zone of serotonin. And
Yeah.
she said to me, I don't want to scare you,
Mm.
but you have so much serotonin, you could have a seizure and you might die. And I was like,
Mm.
holy guacamole.
Yeah. We'll probably do a whole nother episode on that particularly because I think it is something that is not talked about enough. I'm not for or against because I do think in some situations it can be helpful and it can take, depending on where you are in your journey, it can take a little bit of the edge off so that you can see above the cloud to start
Right.
doing the things to help yourself, but it's not the magic pill.
Right. It's the tool
But
to the
if you
toolbox.
are thinking about it, I highly recommend there is a blood test that tells which one matches your body type, your
Right.
genetics, your everything. And unless you know that going in, they do not do that. It's a questionnaire, and here, try this one. And you're
Yeah.
probably gonna have to try a few, and it takes 6 weeks. And obviously, I've read a lot about it. I've also talked to a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of the negative side of it. I
Right.
also hear some of the good, but the negative is enough for me to advocate for people to understand,
Right.
again, what are you putting in your body? What is it actually doing? Because serotonin is not the only neurotransmitter. And if you are listening, 95% of your serotonin is made in your gut. So if
Hmm.
you are lacking serotonin, you have a gut issue for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
And so let's maybe take a little SSRI while we're addressing our gut health.
Correct.
So the other thing is you were on it a very long time.
Hmm.
Not some people a lot longer, but
Right.
they're very hard to come off of. And I remember specifically after that statement she made, it was like, how do I get off of this?
Yeah.
Right. And as I remember, as you began to titrate very carefully
Mhm.
with her
Yeah. Guidance.
testing you and all of that, it did change you physiologically. Like you started to almost come out of, a
Yep.
fog
Yep.
that I think that did create for you. And so it's a slippery slope if you don't ask the right questions. And
Right.
so again, as a health coach, that is part of like what we do, which is empower you to ask the right questions so that you go in and you are not just going in blind and just accepting whatever's given to you. You have to
Right.
educate yourself, but it's hard. It's not easy to go in. And listen, I've gone in plenty of times where I have gone in with questions and they look at me like I have 82 heads and they do not want to talk about it because they don't have any answers. So
Right.
then I know, but what that tells me is then we're not a good connection, like we're not a good fit, so I got to keep moving on. um that I remember that being a hard dip for you. I'm going to call it a dip because
Yeah.
throughout a health journey, while we're trying to transform, we're going to have lots of different dips. So, what was it that kept you committed to the process, even through those challenges?
Hmm.
Because there's been quite a few, which is normal. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. But I actually believe that those dips are a huge reminder of how far you've come.
Mm.
And every time you have a dip, you get up faster.
Yes. The
Because
resilience.
right.
Yeah.
And I love that. And the more we get up and the more quicker it happens, the faster we recognize, wow, look what I can do. Like my body can do, my mind can do, and mindset's half the battle. So what has kept you and still keeps you committed to this hard work?
It's my mental health.
Okay.
So what really changed for me was going at whatever changes I was going to make in my life and that I started making by starting that journey with the new practitioner
Mhm.
and getting off and titrating slowly off of the Lexapro was I want my mental health. Like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. So, what is it that I can do to work on this? And so, once I got off of the Lexapro, then I started a 9 month journey doing a supported systematic total body detox. And that again, in the very beginning, like the first month when, and I was telling my kids about this too the whole time. So I brought them along on the journey of like what's going on with mom. Not that I was like rolling out all of my lab results with them, but I'm like, I'm on a journey. I'm really working to heal myself from the inside out. And I just want to feel better. I mean, they knew kind of like something's up with mom, but they also knew like I spent a lot of time with them and that connection that I had that summer. Honestly, Robin, I would get in the DeLorean and go back in time and do it all over again just for that summer of magic that I had with them and just being hanging out with them. Zoe and I, she loved acai bowls. I think she still likes them. And I was like, Mama ain't got no job right now, so we're gonna learn how to make these on our own. We can't be spending $15 an acai bowl. Let's figure out how to do this on a budget. But just things like that. But I started talking to them, and that's really when I started making a lot of changes. And so the food, so now they're teenagers. And I remember, I don't know if it was you or Jade, my cousin Jade, who was talking about the Ask Bobby app. And so I'm for blanking on Bobby's last name, but
Slave
he,
City is what his
yes,
handle is.
in Flavor City, yes.
Mm.
So he has an app that you can download and you can scan stuff and it will say whether it's Bobby approved with the thumbs up or Bobby not approved. And what I really like about the Bobby not approved is when you scroll down, it highlights exactly what we talked about a little bit ago, the ingredients that are not bad, and then tells you why. So
Mhm.
it's not just a this is bad, it tells you why.
Right.
And
If it's an
so,
endocrine disruptor, if it's a carcinogen, if it
correct.
can cause hyperactivity and all of those things.
And so if you're at a point where you're like, okay, I really want to understand what I'm putting in my body, but I have no clue, and I look at these labels and I feel overwhelmed, there are tools out there like his app, and I'm sure
Mhm.
there's others. But it became kind of a game when the kids and I would go to the store. They'd be like, Mom, scan this. Is this Bobby approved? Or they'd get their snacks out of the cabinet and they'd be like, I'll never forget with my son. He's like, are Takis Bobby approved? I'm like, I'm gonna guarantee you they're not. And we would scan it. And I think for him, like seeing it,
Mhm.
seeing all the stuff, like eventually, like I don't buy Takis anymore. And now, does he eat them from time to time? Probably. But they know that the food that I'm going to bring into this home is not going to be that.
Mhm.
It's going to be healthier versions of that. And so we talk a lot because I've been on this journey now for a couple of years. I mean, I cook. I was cooking before, but really like double down on what I'm making. I bake for them. So I get them every other week and I bake them a sweet treat with ingredients that I know that I'm putting in there. I add things like flax seeds and chia seeds and hemp seeds and protein powder, clean protein powder, so that when they come home from school, they can grab, like last week, it was protein chocolate chip cookies with all the seeds and stuff in them. This week, I plan on making uh, banana brownie muffins
Mm.
that have extra protein and stuff. So they know like, okay, I make my son breakfast every morning. I buy stuff. My daughter loves coffee, but I buy things so that she's not putting the natural, I'm using air quotes,
Mhm.
creamer in them. Um, and so then they start asking, I find that they're starting to ask me more questions and they're coming along on this journey. But anyways, getting back to a couple of summers ago, I just started doing everything for the benefit of my mental health. So and then from when I got those results from her, it kind of took me back, Robin, to when you and I first started working together, because I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this detox, if I'm going to start cleaning the slate, so to speak, and just to be clear, this like detox isn't like total, it's not like a whiteboard.
Magic.
We wiped everything off the whiteboard, but it gets you going, it gets you in the right direction. And I just was like, okay, first, it was, money that I was spending. So am I going to spend all this money and time? It really made me say, okay, is the way that I'm living my life, is what I'm putting in my body, are the products that I'm using in my home, are they all going to just get me back to where I was? Because I don't want to go back there. I
Right.
don't feel that way anymore. And so slowly over time, I started making all of these changes. And it's so freaking cliche, but it's so true. I did not, so people that see me that haven't seen, in fact, I saw someone this week that hasn't seen me in probably a year. She's like, oh my God, you look great. I'm like, thanks. I feel even better.
Hmm.
And people will say, well, what did you do? And I'm like, everything.
You're like, I can't really tell you in one sentence if you have like a month to sit down.
Right. But it was
Right.
all of these
I love
incremental
that though. Everything.
changes.
Yeah.
Everything. What did you do? Everything. I mean, if you would have told me the version of myself 2 years ago that I wouldn't be drinking, I would have been like, no, there's no way. And it's not like I drank all the time, but I definitely enjoyed, a nice glass of red wine. When I was with my ex-boyfriend, we would go to a lot of beer gardens, and we had fun together. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to give this up. Guess what, Robin? I now call myself, and feel free to use this term out there, people, sober adjacent. Because when you tell people you don't drink anymore, they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't go to meetings. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean,
No,
I'm a child of a alcoholic, all of that. But like, I say I'm sober adjacent, because if I choose
that's
to
right.
want to have a drink, I'm going to do it. And guess what? Last weekend, I chose to have 2 beers. And when I woke up on Sunday, I was like, yeah, no, like half my face was swollen. I felt like crap. Like looked in the mirror. I'm like, what
So, but
happened?
so that's an interesting thing because it's not that you can't,
Hmm.
right? But what it does is it reminds you why
Yes.
you don't. And all the content that I see and books I've been reading and the education I've been doing, a lot of it really speaks to perimenopause. There's not very much that really truly speaks to post. And in my opinion and my experience right now, post is just wild, right? It's a different wild than peri,
Yeah,
but
I would agree.
for me, it's just really made me realize we need peri people and we also need post people. And we need people for people who are pregnant, for
Yeah,
women. Like we can't have one person trying to do the entire umbrella of
correct.
gynecology. We just can't. It's too vast, too much, too many nuances. So we really like the education system's got to be set up where you specialize in one of the things
Yeah.
so you can get good at it.
Well, it's like doctors that treat cancer. They don't
Yeah,
treat all cancers, they specialize for a
right.
reason.
Uh-huh.
So
Correct.
the same thing
Yeah.
needs to be applied to women's health, and exactly the journey that you talked about that we go through.
Yeah, and I believe we'll get there. I mean, we have seen huge changes in the last year. Just even the conversation being brought to the FDA, having a round table. I mean, that's just never been heard of. So I am excited and hopeful. I just hope it comes faster at the
That we
end for
get to
my
see it. We
life.
have
Yeah,
daughters, and I
exactly.
think I think for us it's important. I know my purpose in life is to help other women, and that is
Yes.
really what lights me up and that I want to do. And I'm starting to take steps in my life to be able to help women more, even if it's just having conversations like this. I'm
Hmm.
very open about this. I talk to my daughter a lot about this because I want to be forthcoming with her so that when she gets to this point in her life that she understands. And I talk to my son because guess what? He's going to have
He's
a
gonna have
partner
a
at
wife.
some
That's
point.
right.
And he's
Mhm.
got a sister and he's got me. Like,
That's right.
why
You
should
need,
I keep all of this in?
yeah.
We're family, and people that I'm close
So
in my life.
that what you're saying really like hits home to like industry, corporate, that whole sector, they all need education
Yeah.
because a lot of that is run top down. Is It's a bigger percent of men,
Oh, yeah.
and men don't understand really because women don't even understand. It's
No.
like they're just stepping in, and we're not crazy, but they need to understand what is physiologically and biologically happening to us so they can. And I feel for them in a sense of like they're going along with their whole work and their corporate life, right? And you have all these amazing women, and all of a sudden these women, things are like happening and they're like, what is happening? And they don't know what's happening. And so it becomes a big cluster. Women quit. The percentage of
Yeah.
women that quit in peri and post menopause is
I
insane.
did it. I did it. I'm a statistic.
Right. They cannot do their daily tasks because their
Right.
brain is just not, it's not just your brain, it's a lot of things. But it sounds like when you were, and you continue to talk about your kids, like what's so intriguing to me that I see over and over is when you start doing the work, it really changes the environment of your home. And it
Mhm.
really impacts not just you, but it's that
Yeah.
ripple effect. And that was something
Yeah.
that we really honed in on school. It's like talk to one person, that person talks to, and it like ripples out. And
Yeah.
so, like you're saying, conversations matter. Those
Yeah.
conversations will get rippled out and told over and over, for generations to come. And that's the whole point of community. And
Mhm.
community is a huge part in midlife. We need a community, but our community gets smaller because our tolerance goes down,
Correct.
and we can't have too many people because our brain's so wild as it is. But I think it's important that we have people that come before us, people that are where we are, and then people that are behind us so
Yeah.
that they can learn from us.
I love
So
that.
don't be ashamed or don't be shy. Don't have like feelings like I don't want to talk about it, because people are craving the information. They're
Yeah.
craving not information like do this, do that. They're craving like people's stories because it really resonates with people.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
we have to keep talking. That's one thing and that's why I love podcasting, because I just feel like even if 200 people listen to this episode, it's 200 more people that have a little bit of information, not only about your life, but just your experience, and something that is happening with you could be happening with them and give them an idea. And maybe if it's not them, it's their sister or their mother. So
Yeah.
I think women's stories matter. For someone who is listening that has taken in a lot of this, and I know we've just really scratched the surface because I want to talk about the detox. I want to talk about
Yeah.
social, emotional, like all of the things that has transpired during this, stage of life for you. But if someone is listening and they're like, okay, like all this makes sense, but it's overwhelming
Yeah.
because they are in that midlife, what would be just one or two things that you could suggest from your lived experience
Mhm.
now to help them take that first shift? And I'm always talking about the 1%
Yep.
because
Yep.
you can't make a full 180.
I would say, well, a couple of things come to mind. So I'm going to give a couple of things that if you just choose one of them, I think that they can really be impactful. And then once you do that for a little while, then bring in something else. And then the next thing, which is exactly what you're talking about the 1% shifts that are stackable and foundational. Sleep.
Mm.
Sleep is huge, and having a sleep routine. So I go back to when my kids were little. My Aunt Debbie taught me after I had my daughter. She's like, I think it was like on week 2 or 3, and I was crying to her on the phone, and I'm like, oh, it is. She's like, you got to get the routine down. Bath bottle bed, bath bottle bed. And I'm like,
That's
what do
right.
you mean? She's like, every night at the same time, you give a bath, you give the bottle, and then you have that, then they go to bed. I mean, my kids fell asleep on my chest. That's what I chose because I was a working mom and that was my bonding time with them. And so then it's almost like if we think about a circadian rhythm, they come to expect that. So they knew, okay, we're having a bath, we're getting lavender, the lights would get turned down low, they would get their bottle. Okay, now I'm snuggling with mom, I can relax, I can go to sleep. I have approached that similarly. I don't get a bottle, but I get
You get tea instead now.
I do. I do. So like pretty much around the same time every single night. Now, are some nights different because my son has practice or my daughter has practice or whatever the case is? Yes. But for the most part, around 8:30, and I know I sound like an old lady when I say that, but around 8:30, I start winding it down. I make my tea. I have a grounding mat that I sit on. I'll burn incense, get the lights down low. It's signaling to my brain we're going to go to sleep soon.
Mhm.
And then when I go to sleep, I make the joke that I look like I'm being held hostage because I have it was
You're
15,
being
yeah, $15 on Amazon, a white noise machine. I turn that on every single night. I have an eye mask that I put on to help with that. I use mouth tape because sleep is so important to me. And we do it. You're going to sleep.
might as well
Have
make the best of it.
make
What
the
I
best.
find so interesting about the bath bottle bed, because that is what I do with my kids, is we think that we're different.
Right.
I mean, we're all just big babies, basically,
Yeah.
and we need the structure and we need boundaries and we need those soothing things and we need our body needs to be signaled.
Yes.
And if we think that jumping into bed without doing anything all the time, like again, obviously it's 80/20, just to give yourself grace and stuff, but because there is life. But if you're 80% of the time you're signaling your body that this is coming, then
Yeah.
all of your systems start to like
Power down.
yeah, power down and understand that. But a lot of us don't do that. We jump into bed or we're scrolling on our phone, and that's the hardest addictive habit I think that we all have,
Yeah.
um, adults and 10-year-olds and 5-year-olds alike, is ditching that. And
Yeah.
so, if I could give anybody any advice as they walk away today, if you are somebody who's a device looker, before you go to bed, then try to at least do away with that one thing and put a book in its place.
Right.
Because there is something different about reading a book.
Right.
Just it's not the same stimulation for your brain. It's no
Or
blue
put
light.
it, or if you're going to do it, if you say to yourself, I can't break this addiction, then put a timer. We
Right.
all have timers on our phone to say, okay, for 15 minutes, I'm going to scroll. And then
Sure.
after that, like you said,
But
either,
don't scroll in bed. Don't scroll in your bed, because
right.
that scroll somewhere else in the house, then, and I'm talking to myself because it is, I don't care how anybody stacks it. It is an addictive device and we're
Yeah.
all addicted to it. Like literally the entire United States of America,
Yeah.
whatever age you hold that thing in your hand, addiction starts.
Yeah. And so other things for me are daily movement.
Mm.
Notice I do not use the word exercise. I do some sort of daily movement, and movement might be I walk, or I go outside and maybe I'll do some stretches, or maybe I'll watch a video and lift some weights, or maybe I'll go and meet up with you and do a yoga class or something. But it's moving my body. And that's what I tell my kids. Like even when we go on vacation, I will walk the airport like a crazy person. And they're like, Mom, what are you doing? And I tell them I have to move my body. I can't sit here. I have to move my body because when I start moving, it just gets things flowing and I mentally feel better. So again, I go to everything that I do now is with my mental health. It's paramount to me. So I would say movement. And then I bookend my days. So the morning routine I still have, and my nighttime routine, the bath bottle bed, those are some of my non-negotiables that even there's times now on occasion I do work from home, but on occasion I might have to travel to different locations. I'll get up 30 minutes earlier so that I can have a little bit of time to have my sips of coffee in the quiet, because when I like jump up and like, oh my gosh, I have to do this and I have to do that, I'm not, it doesn't put me in a good place. I used to be like that. So I get it if you're in that place of your life where you feel like you jolt out of bed and you got to, hit the ground running. 'Cause you got to get kids to school and all of that. I still have those responsibilities to a degree. It's changed. Obviously, they're, excuse me, teenagers, but I think as women, kind of going back to what something that you said earlier, we have to give to ourselves because
Hmm.
if we have, it's again, it's so cliche. If we have empty cups, we cannot pour into those that we love.
Hmm.
And I say that selfish gets a bad rap all the time because we feel as moms selfish if I'm doing this. And guess what? No one's going to be selfish on your behalf. No one is going to put your oxygen mask on before Like, you have to do things for yourself in order to be.
The, where in life was the disconnect, right? I would love to like do some research behind this, but where in life did somebody say that it's stuck, that we should not treat our temple with the utmost respect? And when we disrespect ourselves, we can't expect good outcomes. It's like having a car and just getting it washed, but never changing the oil. Your car is going to die. It's going to blow up at some point, right? Or never cleaning the inside, just cleaning the outside. So visually people can see what that looks like. But on the inside, everything's a freaking wreck, you know? So again, if you're leaving this podcast today, one of the things you can definitely take away as a shift is just your mindset. Like, your body is the only thing that you own. It is the temple that you're given with a purpose, with physicality, even if you have limitations, whatever it is that you are gifted, which it is, your body's a gift, right? I mean, let's treat it that way. Like, let's figure out what you need in order to do that. And that's clearing away a lot of the cobwebs. So the last thing I want to ask you, just knowing you, is through this journey, and I know that you'll have to reflect for a second, but what is the one of the things that you are most proud of yourself?
Not giving up on myself.
Amazing. And that's the journey of transformation.
Yeah.
Because so often we do give up on ourselves and we put ourselves last and we do all of the things that doesn't show ourselves the utmost respect for ourselves. So
Yeah.
if you're going through a journey of any sort and you come out with that,
Yeah.
that's the biggest win to me. But the byproduct of that is all of the goodness. And so for people listening, wondering, well, she's done all this stuff, what has actually transformed? Everything has transformed, but you never talk about your weight,
No.
but you did the other day.
Yeah. Like, I've lost 30 pounds in the last 14 months
Which
of.
is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's because you were not focused on it.
Right.
It's because
Yeah.
you were
It's so
focusing
bizarre.
on, but it's because you were focusing on all the things that were out of balance. And that's why we have to live our life the best that we can with balance, because when we balance, the byproducts are beautiful. You have a foundation now, and your journey is definitely not over. You know, I mean,
Oh, right.
there's so many parts. So we're going to come back another time because I really want to dig into the detox. All right. So as we leave today, my hope and my wish for you is that you see what one person's beginning of the journey looked like and all of the ebbs and flows that we shared. Health and wellness is your whole life. It's not, there's no end point to it. Thank you for joining us. And thank you so much for coming on, being authentic, sharing, being vulnerable, having the courage to just put it all out there, because we need more of that. So, all right, I will see y'all next week. Have a good rest of your week.
Bye.
That episode had so many great takeaways. I hope you feel inspired and more empowered to make small 1% shifts on your wellness journey this week. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. If you want to leave a review, share your thoughts, and let me know how you're going to be implementing these 1% shifts into your life. And don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with another mama who could use a little wellness love. Want to stay connected? Join me on Instagram and Facebook at Live Life Balanced with Robin. Check out my website at livelifebalancedwithrobin.com for more resources, and grab yourself some freebies while you're there. Until next time, I hope you find peace, love, and light by breathing, being present, and allowing for all possibilities to come your way. See y'all next week. Love to y'all.